Hi Hobbyhawks, this is Ms. Escalante. Today we are going over how to multiply and divide integers. Our three topics are going to be forms of multiplication and division, dozy man, and how to problem solve. Let's get started. In front of you I have created a T-chart dividing multiplication and division forms so you can see them. Let's look at multiplication first. We generally see multiplication as this, 4 times 3. But it can be written in multiple different ways. Another example would be 4, a dot, and 3. This dot right here is taking the place of the multiplication sign. Another example is going to be 4 times 3 with the numbers in parentheses and no sign in between. If you want practice, you can write the multiplication sign in between. Another way to write this as well would be 4 with only our 3 in parentheses. Again, you can write the multiplication sign in so you remember. Let's look over at division. The first way we see division is the same sign. Here's your division sign. 2 divided by 1 equals. Another way we can write it, and we've learned in multiple places, that a fraction bar is the same as division. So let's see. 2 divided by 1. If we wanted to, we could convert this fraction bar right here into a division sign. That is the same as 2 divided by 1. Now that we've learned the forms, you'll be able to recognize what you're supposed to do when you see these problems. The next part is seeing what type of symbol you're going to give your answer. And we're going to use dozy man. Dozy man is really easy to draw and is how we figure out what sign we are going to give our answer for each problem. So the way we draw dozy man is by drawing a circle and then adding 2 negative eyes and 1 positive mouth. By using our fingers and seeing what signs we are already using and covering them up, we will be able to figure out what sign is left and what sign we are giving our answer. Let's go ahead and practice with some problems. To start our problem-solving section, we're going to look at 2 scenarios. When you have a positive multiplying or dividing, and a negative multiplying and dividing. If you look up at the top, I have drawn dozy man right there for you, and we're going to use him to practice. Let's start with positive and positive. These are what we learned when we started learning multiplication and division. So if I have a 4 times a 3, remember this is the same form as 4 times 3, my answer is going to stay positive. I'm going to have a positive 12. I don't need the sign there all the time though. By just seeing a 12, I know my answer is positive. Let's try a division problem. Let's try 12 divided by 3. Remember that fraction bar is the same thing as division. It equals 12 divided by 3. My answer is going to be a positive 4. But I still don't need that positive sign. By just seeing that 4, I know my answer is going to be positive. That means when I am multiplying or dividing a positive times a positive, my answer will always be positive. Let's try some negatives now. Let's do a negative 4 times a negative 3. Remember, that is written the same way as negative 4 times negative 3. If I use dozy man, I'm going to cover up the two signs that I am using. That means I'm going to cover up a negative and a negative. So let's scratch those out. I'm covering up my negative sign and a negative sign. I am left with a positive. My answer is going to have a positive sign. So -4 times -3 is going to be a positive 12. I'm using the same division and math skills as I did with my positive and positive. See, my answer is still the same. The only difference is my sign. Let's go ahead and try a division. Let's try 12, -12, divided by -3. Remember, that is still written as -12 divided by -3. If we're using Dozy Man, we're going to look for the signs we are using, a negative and a negative. That means I am scratching out my negative and a negative and left with a positive sign. My answer is positive 4, the same as above. That means if I'm multiplying or dividing a negative times a negative, my answer is going to always be positive. Let's look at two more examples. Right now I've got negative and positive and negative, multiplying and dividing. Let's start with negative and positive. If I have a -4 times a 3, I'm going to use Dozy Man and cover up what symbols I see right now. I say I have a negative and I have a positive. That means I'm left with a negative sign. My answer is going to be a -12. Let's try a division problem with negative and positives. So I'm going to have a -12 divided by 3. That's the same as -12 divided by 3. I'm still covering up a negative sign and a positive sign. I'm left with a negative sign, meaning my answer is -4. Now let's try positive and negative numbers. If I have a positive 4 times a -3, I'm going to use Dozy Man and cross out my positive and my negative. I'm left over with a negative sign, which means my answer is going to be a -12. If I have a 12 divided by -3, remember this is written as 12 divided by -3, I'm going to cross out what I have. I've got a positive 12 and a -3. I'm still going to have a negative sign left over. That goes to my answer. So my answer is a -4. That means when I am multiplying, dividing a negative and a positive and a positive and a negative, my answer is going to be negative for both. Dozy Man is going to be the easiest way to figure out what symbol, what sign our answers are going to have. Continue to write Dozy Man on your homework and test, and you will never get an answer for multiplying and dividing integers wrong.